what do you think about, let's say, reparations?
You want to talk about reparations? I mean, look, I think there's options for reparation plans. I think the way that they're approaching it is a little bit haphazard. I think it's really more about the poor communities within the United States and the communities that need support and help, and the people who are teetering on that step of like not really even be able to survive if they get a medical bill. I think if we're going to focus on reparations, let's go for the poorest places within the country and let's distribute some sort of efforts that will help get more government taxes and more money into the hands of the civilians, not just into programs which are designed to keep them homeless because those programs exist. We have a homeless industrial complex. We have a lot of people who make money from the benefit of homeless people being homeless. Like if you run out of homeless people, you run out of those programs, and then those people are homeless. So like you have to, it's like a domino effect in terms of how it's set up. So I think like programs like that could make sense, and I think reparations could work if it's done like that. There's been a model around a lottery type reparations type thing where it's like, okay, the government is going to provide a certain fund within a lottery of a group of people in a certain class of social class, right? They all get a lottery they can enter in every single day. It's a mobile app. It's really easy. They pay 50 cents towards a lottery to play, and they can win anywhere from $10 to $1,000. Now, in the eyes of an individual who is poor and who's not making much money, that's really, really big. Now, imagine you do a lottery like that, but of the people who play, 10% win. 10% of the people who play this lottery now win. You have a pool of the money that all those people pay, and the next day they can play again, and the next day they can play again, and the next day they can play again. And you start having a true understanding of how you distribute wealth to not distribute just to one class. Because if we're going to talk about reparations, let's talk about the Native Americans. Let's talk about our people, the Puerto Ricans. Let's talk about the people who grew up in any of the Caribbean islands. Let's talk about all those people who lost their land and still don't have money and were part of the slave trade and also experienced that. That becomes a much larger group of individuals, and the US government can never figure out a program like that. But if you go with reparations in the sense of like poverty and like where people are poorest, only making $10,000 a year type people, or only making $50,000 a year, because $1,000 to someone making that can be a big deal. And if let's say they win X amount of times throughout the year, that could be big. So I think introducing programs like that that are smarter would be the way to go. If you're going straight up to like every single Black person or every single one person group of this group gets a certain amount of money, you're never going to pass it in Congress. No one's ever going to approve that. Like our government is too divided, and like no one's going to move forward on any program like that. But if you play into a lottery where technically even the US government could make money from that because so many people playing every single day, certain amount of people winning, and you're not trying to cheat the system, it's still a game, might be more considered. So I think they have to get creative with it. But in the end, yeah, the US government needs to give more to the poor people, especially before the robots come, because then we're all fucked.
I don't know. I think that they're giving a lot of money to just people that are coming here even illegally.
I mean, look, there are government programs that seem to be giving a lot of money to illegal or immigrants and stuff like that. And I think like, yeah, that's going to be concerning for a lot of citizens, and it's going to be extremely concerning when you hear about the numbers of people who are coming through. And it's going to be even more concerning when these individuals are moving into your communities and they're given priority over homeless individuals or other unhoused individuals who actually have been waiting for help for years. So yeah, that's a problem. I'm seeing like individuals who would normally advocate for like BLM and other causes that seem more left now moving more right in terms of their immigration views, because they're seeing what's happening when busloads of individuals are coming into their communities, and now homeless people definitely don't have a place to stay, and now you have unhoused individuals in like communities, and people are freaking the fuck out. And that's the problem with like New York liberals. They don't understand like how these issues that are happening down in the border are impacting those towns in the border, and they don't really care very much, other than to seem virtuous in like it's the open door policy. And I think like that's a little concerning. I also have to really, really put shame on everyone in terms of like the amount of Ukrainian or other people who are coming in who are getting first priority amongst even amongst those other immigrants. So I think it's like the United States just has the priority problem in terms of like where should we put our priorities. I think a lot of Americans would agree they'd prefer the priorities put on Americans first, and a lot of Americans are also empathetic to understand like there's a policy we need in place. This isn't it. Let's figure out something more hospitable to everyone in a certain sense.
It's also very state by state, and that's an issue. But I mean, let's say going back to you, if we were to get reparations, right? Because I'm Dominican American, you're Puerto
Yeah,
Rican
give
American.
me my check. Fuck
We would
it.
have to go and get. We
I'll
would
play
have
the
to
lottery too. I'll go play the lottery.
go. The lotto ain't gonna happen. Like,
No,
come on.
I mean,
How about the people? Hold on a second. How about the people that actually built this country?
I mean, I
Um,
think, look, I
and
think
got
there are.
screwed and made a lot of money. Hold on, and made a lot of money for the corporations. What about those people? Like, why can't they get reparations? What happened to that 40 acres and a mule that they were promised, you know? And they're throwing around numbers.
They
They're
are. No,
throwing around numbers. That shit is never going to work. We have way too much debt. How about maybe give them a tax break? Figure out those families, who they were, because we can figure out everything else. Maybe some sort of tax break, and also maybe some sort of like government funded business that allows them to be, entrepreneurial and also have the government get something as well.
I mean, look, I think there's a lot of jobs that are available to people who come into this country. I think there's a lot of things that people from other countries contributing to the United States are end up being lower cost labor. They end up being able to do jobs or more labor intensive jobs that most of the white people in those areas don't want to do. Um, so I think there is a benefit, and I think there's always that factor when talking about immigration. And I think that's something that the United States recognizes, and I think our administration recognizes it very strongly, and that's something that they're trying to encourage and do. We saw it in Florida when they said no immigrants, and then nothing was getting built, no construction, like a lot of things were just like stopped. Not realizing like, oh wait, oh right, who are they hiring for these really dangerous jobs that like are not fun to do? Like, yeah, every time. Um, so yeah, I think
Not
there's a
even,
lot of
but
that.
I think
In terms of reparations, though, I think
conflating. Yeah, we're
for
conflating
the
immigrants.
reparations part, I would say like I would say I have a personal feeling in terms of like Puerto Rico as like place that still is a commonwealth, and is still not given the same legal rights as other states in the United States, even
That's
though it
so
does
messed
a
up.
lot of money for the United States, and it is like the world's largest manufacturer of drugs, like literally producing all the medications that everyone takes all around the world. Up to like 74% of them are made in Puerto Rico. So you have this island of people who were just never freed. Like for the Puerto Ricans in particular, you got into, the Puerto Rican paper genocide where all the indigenous Tainos, all the indigenous Arawak people who were there were reclassified as black so that they would remain in the slave trade as long as black people remained in the slave trade. And it wasn't until the civil rights movement where they had a certain level of freedom um, as Puerto Ricans. And they still haven't received the same amount of freedoms as like a lot of people because of that Commonwealth status. So I think there is like options of turning back time for certain places. I think in the bigger scheme of like the United States, like massive reparations is going to be very difficult. But I think Guam, I think Puerto Rico, I think there needs to be a give back that is not Haiti. It's not a give back with debt,
Mhm.
right? It's a give back with like revenue. Like, come
And
on,
just like
let's
tax
going.
breaks
Yeah, exactly.
and also
Represent. I mean, yeah, if you want to go for statehood, but I think like I think it's a place that can survive without statehood, and I think a lot of the Caribbean islands have shown that. And I think there's strength in like the support of like outside places, but um, I don't know. I think for the Caribbean in particular, specifically for Puerto Rico, just considering how much the United States has done to the people there, specifically even like through the 70s of sterilizing the women of Puerto Rico, like just shit that just happened recently. It's wild that we're still in a place on that island in particular where it's still not free.